When children have imaginary friends, it's seen as cute. But when adults do, it's seen as a disorder. I had an imaginary talking horse called Terry. I was 17. He was useful, got me through a lot. Goddamn miss, I know he would always come to me if I needed him. Enjoyed eating carpet, as I remember. Is it really that common for kids to have such friends, though? I don't think I've ever actually met a kid with one. When babies shit themselves, it's normal, but when I do it, I'm suffering from substance abuse disorder. Crazy. Adults are supposed to know how to separate their imagination from reality. I wonder if it's a cultural thing, because in Europe I think it's weird even for children. I've never heard of someone having imaginary friends and feel it would be quite unusual in my country. If you haven't already seen it, you should watch Drop Dead Fred. It's not even a good movie, but it's my absolute favorite. I did, sort of. Because I loved Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends. So I would create characters and sometimes even give them to my real-life friends and draw them. But I didn't think they were real. It was imaginary play. When I was 16-17, I had imaginary friends. They were tiny elves. I was living with my grandma away from my family in a different state. With it just being me and my grandma, she worked all day, so I was completely alone. Had no friends and was bullied. Those imaginary elves helped me through my middle school years until I got to go back home to my mom and siblings. Now I don't have imaginary friends or think to have them. Religious people think that God is watching them every second. Yeah, dude, cause kids' brains are incredibly underdeveloped and function differently compared to adults. When millions have the same imaginary friend, we have holidays devoted to his son's birthday, death, and resurrection. Unless it's religion. For example, millions of adults today are celebrating their imaginary friend coming back to life. This is treated by society as completely normal, a positive even, and not in any way a disorder, or cute. Well, my sister had an imaginary friend as a kid and it was creepy and weird and stuck around into adulthood. Fuck Bob. That dude was creepy as fuck. She was diagnosed with something for hearing voices. It is cute when you're a kid. Unless it's Bob. Then get that checked out. I used to have a shirt that said my imaginary friend just beat up your imaginary friend. It always started shit in primary school. Well, duh. As an adult you are supposed to be rational enough to pretend you are normal. Having an imaginary friend isn't a symptom of a disorder, letting anyone else know about it is. It's currently Easter and it seems a lot of adults have an imaginary friend. Sadly, adults that have imaginary friends are common and normalized, it's just called religion. Not if you do it right. Shave your head and call your imaginary friend a tulpa and people will flock to you and call you mystical. Say your imaginary friends are your persona archetypes and people will think you're scholarly. Only if you don't realize the friend in your head is imaginary. I personally don't see the issue with having imaginary friends as an adult, as long as you recognize they aren't real. I had imaginary friends up until I was 18 years old because I was so lonely and depressed. It was the only thing that kept me from feeling like I was truly alone in the world. I also acknowledged they weren't real, and now I channel that creativity into making characters for my stories. People cope in different ways, and imaginary friends are certainly a healthy coping mechanism, as long as you are able to acknowledge and accept they are not real. The trick is not to let anyone know you still talk to them, that way it stays cute. I'm a writer, which basically is just a socially acceptable way of being an adult with imaginary friends. I also make them pay rent. And other people get to meet them. If a child has an imaginary friend, I will think that they're haunted. Correction. If kids have an imaginary friend, it's cute. If adults have one, they're religious. Billions of adults talk to their imaginary friend every Sunday. I'm pretty sure if you have an imaginary friend as an adult, it's called religion. Not really. Lots of people have Jesus as an imaginary friend. When adults talk to their imaginary friend, it's called praying. People talk to God or Jesus and shit every day. It's absolutely terrifying. Yes, a disorder. Now tell all those religious folk this so we can make some progress in the world. This inspired another thought to me which I tried to post but was automatically removed. However, I find it kind of sad objectively, that a possible cherished childhood imaginary friend must therefore die or be abandoned before we can become a socially healthy adult. But when they say it's their beliefs, it's seen as religious SMH my head. I still think it's valid, but you have to pay close attention to the kids' imaginary friends. When I was a kid, adults played along when I said I saw things. I was in my teens before I realized nobody else could actually see them and something wasn't right. I just figured everyone was seeing what I saw and just learned to tell hallucinations from real. Then there's me concocting an imaginary world full of people and figures for a game I want to write. Never had any as a kid. I'm 16 now and have quite a few, but it's better than loneliness. I wonder if there is a correlation between imaginary friends and childhood trauma. I knew a kid that had an imaginary friend. It was funny and cute at first, until I found out when he described his friend, he described a kid with a messed up face and a mean daddy. Flushed face. No, I think it is still considered odd in children too. Presumably a coping mechanism for childhood trauma? Is it weird that I discuss things with myself as if I am my own imaginary friend? When children pee themselves, it's seen as normal. But when adults do, it's seen as a disorder. One time I had an imaginary friend named Bobo, who was a monkey wearing a Hawaiian shirt. There was this girl who wanted to be my friend on the playground, but she was aggressive and I didn't like her. So I deadass gave her my imaginary friend so that I wouldn't have to be her friend, and it worked. She left me alone. I don't know what that says about me or her.
Boy, I had 3 imaginary friends growing up. Definitely scared my mom by saying they live in the changing room.
Having an imaginary friend and having a friend that's imaginary are very different things. Many things kids do are seen as cute, but would be considered a disorder later. Just imagine someone laying on his back trying to fit its foot in the mouth compulsively. Unless your imaginary friend is named Jesus or God. Then, it's perfectly acceptable to be delusional. Unless that imaginary friend lives in the sky and is judging everyone all the time. Not if you're religious, but it definitely should be seen as such. And when lots of people have the same one, it's called religion. When someone who obviously has autism acts in a way that is outside of social norms unknowingly, it's endearing. When someone with more subtle autism acts in a way that is outside of social norms unknowingly, they are just an idiot to have a laugh at. As someone with subtle autism, fuck society for that one. Actually, when adults have imaginary friends, it's called religion. Get enough people to believe in your imaginary friend and you've got yourself a religion. Dang, why is religion being dogged on in here? Like the one dude barely said anything and now a bunch of people are being jerks to him just because they dislike his opinion. It's so saddening. When adults do it, it's called fiction and it's a multi-billion-dollar industry. If you can't understand the differences between adults and children, you might need to seek treatment yourself. If adults all have the same imaginary friend, it's seen as a religion. Unless you're an artist, or a religion. Then you get away with it, and people even make fandoms to support it. Well, it is quite unusual for an adult to have an imaginary friend.
I mean, normal to see a child have a tantrum and cry and ball up on the floor. If I saw an adult do that, I'd be extremely concerned. I used to have an imaginary friend when I was a kid. Her name was Silky, and she could change her age at will, think from my age at the time to baby, to teen to elderly. I think I was a lonely child looking back. I just thought about it, and what is the socially acceptable cutoff age for imaginary friends?